All right, to discuss Nomvula Mkonyani's interactions with representatives of different missions is SABC News International Editor Sophie Mkwena. Good afternoon, Sophie. Clearly, the ANC has a lot of work to do to convince sister parties on the continent to understand why President Cyril Ramaphosa opted for a government of national unity. What are the main sticking points?
Well, the issue here is that you know that ANC is the oldest liberation organization on the continent. And in fact, even globally, when you look at political parties, ANC is a very, very formidable, well-known party. Many years, the party has been there since 1912, and it has got relations, particularly with socialist organizations or parties in other regions on the continent, with all those parties, the former liberation organizations. And also you know that most of the political parties on the continent and the struggle was modeled or was adopted by many countries following the launch of the African National Congress after 1912. And therefore there's so much belief and understanding that the ANC, and particularly South Africa in this case, must always provide leadership on specific African issues, particularly when you look at a fight to ensure that there's total liberation economically as well on the continent. And therefore, you have a situation where now Africa is saying, but hang on, will this still be possible for the ANC to lead us or to make meaningful input in terms of where to from here as a continent for total liberation or emancipation? Because the issue of the economy is still a thorny one, the land question, the minerals of the continent. Now, even people were asking us as international desk of the SABC behind the scenes that how are we going to negotiate the issue of food security on the continent with an opposition party such as the DA? Because when you talk about negotiations, trade negotiations at the WTO, when you look at agricultural subsidies, you know that the West, they do have a particular position, and the South has a particular position. And therefore, how are we going to trust that the negotiations will come out in favor of the West and particularly the African continent or Sub-Sahara? And therefore, you have those issues. And then the issue of the foreign policy, when you look at peace and security,
which the ANC has emphasized that insofar as policy is concerned, there will be continuity. But could there be contentious issues here? How will the president navigate that?
Well, as I pointed out, when you look at the issues of the war in Ukraine, there's a concern because you know that the DA had a particular position, the Middle East, the same thing. Now, the president will have to ensure that he is able to find synergy in cabinet on those issues. And the ANC used the statement of intent to ensure that they are able to lock in the principle around the foreign policy. Everybody agrees to human rights, justice, equality, and therefore that will be the approach. Whatever decision is taken, the president will argue that it is based on the principle or the policies anchored on human rights, on justice, on equality, and fairness. And therefore, I think he is going to do just that.
And then just in closing, we know that the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, will meet his counterparts from liberation parties in the SADC region. What will be on that agenda?
He is going to continue to try and take all these parties on board. When you look at a country like Angola, and that's what the president did yesterday when he met his counterpart from MPLA, who is the president also of that country, Frelimo in Mozambique, they will have to take the leadership on board. SWAPO, you have CCM from Tanzania, you have ZANU-PF, and also you have Botswana, and therefore he is going to take these sister parties on board, but also indicate to them how they arrived at this decision, and going forward, how are they going to manage this decision. But
Yeah.
I think above all, how do they hope to claw back power?
All right, Sophie, as always, thank you very much for your insights. That was Sophie Mkwena, SABC News International Editor.